Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're looking into something pretty close to home for a lot of us, I think. It's youth homelessness here in LA. And we're going to be focusing on what happens, after someone gets off the streets. What are those crucial next steps?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to get into this, we're going to be taking a close look at a 2024 article from the USC Center for Health Journalism.
Okay.
And the title is, "For Young Adults Experiencing Homelessness in LA, Housing is Just the Beginning."
Mm. That title, I think that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's easy to think that problem solved, right?
Right.
Once someone has a roof over their head.
Exactly.
But it's really just the first chapter in a much longer story, as this article points out.
Yeah, and I think to really drive that point home, let's try and paint a picture here. Imagine three houses, blue and white trim,
Mm-hmm.
bikes and sneakers kind of scattered in the yard.
Okay. Okay.
Sounds pretty typical, right?
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah.
That's Jovenes Inc. And the work that they do is anything but ordinary.
Interesting.
They've been around for a while now, since 1990.
Wow.
And they were founded by a priest who wanted to help Central American youth who were escaping violence.
That historical context, I think, is really important, right?
Yeah.
Because it speaks to the organization's deep understanding of trauma. I mean, they started by working with young people who had been through, incredibly difficult circumstances.
Right.
And that focus on trauma has really remained central to their mission.
Yeah. Before we get too deep into Jovenes, let's pull back a little bit, zoom out, and look at the bigger picture here.
Okay, sure.
So the article mentions that in 2023, there were over 75,500 people experiencing homelessness in LA County.
That is a very large number.
It is a huge number, and nearly 4,000 of them were young adults between 18 and 24.
And that age range, it makes you wonder, what are the different ways that we can even begin to approach an issue like this?
Yeah.
Is this purely a housing problem?
Oh,
Or is there something more complex, more nuanced going on here?
well, and that's where I think Jovenes comes back into the picture, because they seem to be doing something right. The article says that an impressive 92% of their clients maintain stable housing. So what is it? What's that secret sauce? Are they just providing a roof, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, that's the question that jumped out at me too. It's one thing to give someone a place to live, but what about everything else? All the things that you need to rebuild your life. And that's where I think Jovenes' holistic approach comes in.
Cool.
They offer emergency and permanent housing, but they also provide college support, job training, mental health services, you name it.
Yeah.
A whole range of programs designed to address the underlying causes of homelessness.
So they're acknowledging that it's not just about having a physical space, it's about addressing the trauma that so many of these young people have experienced.
Exactly. And the article really highlights this through the words of Dr. Diane Tanaka from Children's Hospital Los Angeles.
Okay.
And she works with homeless youth, and she points out that the young people that they see at the clinic almost always have a history of trauma. And we're not just talking about, typical teenage ups and downs. We're talking about deep-rooted pain that stems from things like abuse, witnessing violence, experiencing racism, and dealing with family instability.
Wow. That's a really, really powerful point. It's like you said, it's not just about the symptoms, it's about getting down to those root causes.
Yeah.
So how does Jovenes do that? How do they actually help these young people work through all of that trauma?
Well, they have a few different strategies, but one that really stands out to me is their unconventional approach to mental health care. The article introduces us to Dr. Moises Rodriguez, who's the mental health director at the clinic.
Okay.
And he recognizes that, traditional therapy isn't always the answer,
Makes sense.
especially for young people who have been through so much.
So what does he do instead? What does this alternative approach look like?
He has this great quote in the article. He says, "There's a lot of things outside therapy that can be therapeutic."
I love that.
So he'll organize, basketball games, hiking trips. He even helps them find jobs. It's about building trust and providing a sense of normalcy, which can be so powerful for these young adults who have rarely experienced either of those things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's about creating a safe and supportive environment where they can start to heal and rebuild their lives.
Exactly. And it seems to be working. The article introduces us to a 23-year-old client of Dr. Rodriguez's. They referred to him as L to protect his privacy.
Right.
But L has been on his own since he was 13.
Wow.
And he talks about how important it is to feel safe and free to express himself without judgment. He says that's something he's rarely experienced in his life. but he finds it at Jovenes.
That's such a powerful testament to the work that they're doing. It really sounds like they're going above and beyond, just providing housing and creating a true community of support.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. They're addressing the needs of the whole person,
Yeah.
not just their housing situation. But Jovenes also recognizes that individual support is only part of the equation.
Right.
These young people also face systemic barriers, especially when it comes to education. And that brings us to their College Success Initiative.
All right, let's dive into that.
Yeah.
What is the College Success Initiative all about?
So it's a partnership with local colleges to address a really overlooked issue: housing insecurity among college students. I think when most people hear college students, you picture like someone living in a dorm or an apartment with roommates.
Yeah.
You don't really think about homelessness. It's kind of a blind spot.
No, it is.
But the article points out that a staggering 1 in 5 community college students in LA experience homelessness.
Wow.
And over half are precariously housed. So that means that they might be couch surfing or living in overcrowded conditions or, constantly on the verge of losing their housing.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult to focus on, studying for exams or writing papers when you don't even know where you're going to sleep that night.
Right. It's hard to imagine how you could even function like that.
Yeah. And all this instability can really derail those academic dreams.
Yeah.
Make it that much harder to break the cycle of poverty.
So how does this College Success Initiative, how does it actually work?
Oh, okay.
What kind of support are they providing?
They provide a range of services, including housing vouchers, financial aid counseling, academic tutoring, even help with things like transportation and childcare.
Wow.
It's a very multifaceted approach designed to address the unique challenges faced by students experiencing homelessness.
So it sounds like they're really trying to create that safety net for these students.
Yeah.
Recognizing that housing is we've one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And the program doesn't just benefit the students themselves.
Oh, okay.
It also has a ripple effect on the community. So when these students succeed, they're more likely to contribute to the local economy, raise healthy families, become active and engaged citizens.
That makes sense.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
But the article also mentions that housing insecurity isn't limited to community colleges.
Right. It affects students at Cal State and UC schools as well, though maybe at lower rates. But this really highlights the fact that, housing affordability is a pervasive issue. It impacts people across socioeconomic lines.
Yeah.
It's not just about a lack of affordable housing, but also things like stagnant wages, rising living costs, and a lack of support systems for students who are struggling.
So what does this tell us about the bigger picture here? We've talked about Jovenes, Inc. and their incredible work, but how does this all connect back to the broader issue of youth homelessness?
Well, I think it demonstrates that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. This is a complex issue, and we need a multi-pronged approach that includes things like increasing affordable housing options, expanding access to mental health services, and providing educational and job training opportunities.
Yeah.
But just as importantly, I think we need to challenge the stigma surrounding homelessness. We need to create a more compassionate and supportive society.
I agree. It's about recognizing the humanity of everyone experiencing homelessness, regardless of their age or their background.
Absolutely. And that means understanding the systemic factors that contribute to homelessness and advocating for policies that address those root causes.
Right.
It's not enough to simply provide those temporary solutions.
Yeah.
We need to work towards creating lasting change.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the scope of youth homelessness in LA, the incredible work that Jovenes is doing, and the need for that multifaceted approach that addresses both individual needs and systemic issues. What are some of the key takeaways that you think will really stick with our listener?
For me, one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of understanding those long-term challenges. Faced by young adults transitioning out of homelessness.
Yeah.
We need to provide that ongoing support to help them address the underlying trauma, build those life skills, and achieve their goals.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. It's about recognizing that homelessness is not just a housing issue.
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted problem that requires a multifaceted solution.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really resonated with me is the importance of meeting people where they are.
Yes.
Dr. Rodriguez's approach to mental health care is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
He understands that traditional therapy isn't always the answer, and that sometimes people just need someone to listen, offer support, and help them, navigate those challenges that they're facing.
It's so true. And it's not just about professional support.
Right.
It's about creating that culture of compassion and understanding within our communities. We can all play a role in supporting young people experiencing homelessness by, volunteering our time, donating to organizations like Jovenes, or simply being more mindful of the language that we use when discussing this issue.
Absolutely. Even small acts of kindness can make a huge difference in someone's life.
And I think another key takeaway is the importance of addressing those systemic issues
Right.
that contribute to homelessness. It's not enough to simply provide that individual support.
Yeah.
We need to advocate for policies that address things like, affordable housing, access to education and healthcare, and living wages.
You're absolutely right. It's about working towards creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their circumstances.
Exactly. And that means being informed about the issues, engaging in those meaningful conversations, and holding our elected officials accountable for creating policies that promote equity and justice for all.
So we've talked about the complexities of youth homelessness, the importance of that holistic support, and the need for that systemic change. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's that one lingering question that's stuck with you? What's something that will stay with our listener long after they've finished listening to this episode?
Yeah, it's been a really thought-provoking conversation. And honestly, it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right? There's so much more to unpack. So
Yeah.
what is it? What's that one question that just keeps coming back to you, something that will really stick with our listener?
Well, reading this article and hearing all these different stories, I keep coming back to this idea. If you were in charge of designing a program like this, to help young adults transition out of homelessness, what would be at the top of your list? What goes beyond just, giving them a place to live? What are those essential ingredients for success?
Yeah, that is such a powerful question to think about. And it really brings it back to us, doesn't it? We can't just, sit back and expect someone else to fix this problem. We all have a role to play.
Absolutely. It starts with awareness, then it moves to understanding and finally action.
So where can our listeners even start? What are some concrete things that they can do to make a difference?
Well, there are so many ways to get involved, volunteering at a local shelter, donating to organizations like Jovenes, even just having conversations about this issue with your friends and family. All of that adds up.
And it's important to remember that, even small actions can have a ripple effect.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that everyone has something to offer, no matter how big or how small.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and really challenging all of us to think critically about this really important issue.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners out there, I really hope this has sparked some new ideas and inspired you to get involved in supporting this vulnerable population in your own community.
That's what it's all about. Until next time, everyone, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.